You are staring at the blinking green cursor on the cracked liquid crystal display of a stolen Panasonic Toughbook, and you are trying to remember how to force your lungs to draw a single breath of air. You are sitting cross-legged on the frozen, rusted, grated floor of an abandoned microwave communication relay station. You are 8,000 feet above sea level, buried deep in the unforgiving, jagged, completely isolated peaks of the Ruby Mountains in northern Nevada. It is exactly 3:14 in the morning on a Tuesday in November. Outside the thin, uninsulated aluminum walls of the relay shack, a Category 4 winter storm is screaming through the canyon. The wind is battering the corrugated metal so violently that the entire structure is vibrating, groaning under the immense aerodynamic pressure. It sounds like a dying animal. It threatens to tear itself loose from its concrete moorings at any second and tumble into the pitch-black, frozen, mile-deep abyss below. The ambient temperature inside the shack is 12 degrees below zero. You cannot feel your toes. Your fingers are entirely numb, stiff and pale like dead wood. When you try to bend your knuckles to type, the skin cracks and bleeds, but the cold is so absolute that the blood instantly freezes into dark crimson flakes on the keyboard. Your breath plumes out into the dark air in thick, heavy clouds of white vapor, illuminated only by the harsh, dying, pale green light of your laptop screen. A thick, braided Category 7 Ethernet cable runs from the side of your computer directly into the gutted, exposed circuitry of the massive microwave transmitter dish towering above the shack. You had to climb the icy rungs of the maintenance ladder in the blinding snow to reach it. You had to splice the wires with a dull pocket knife using your bare, frostbitten hands. You had to bypass a mechanical failsafe using nothing but copper alligator clips, electrical tape, and desperate, freezing, redlining adrenaline. On the screen in front of you, a green progress bar is moving with agonizing, microscopic, terrifying slowness. Secure uplink established. Encrypted packet transfer to decentralized servers. 87% complete. You look at the battery indicator in the bottom right corner of the screen. 7% remaining. You tell yourself that the math is going to work out. You tell yourself that the frozen lithium-ion battery will last just long enough. You tell yourself that the dead man switch will engage, that the massive multi-terabyte zip file will successfully bounce off a commercial communication satellite in low Earth orbit, and that the data will rain down into the servers of 10,000 independent journalists, civilian scientists, and dark web whistleblowers across the globe. You tell yourself that your massive, suicidal conspiracy against the shadow government is actually going to work. You're going to shatter the control matrix. You're going to give the fire back to humanity. You're going to end the illusion of scarcity forever. But you know deep in the frozen, hyper-rational, lizard brain center of your mind that you are not going to survive this storm. By tomorrow morning, a federal search and rescue team is going to find your abandoned, stolen SUV at the base of the mountain trail, buried under 3 feet of fresh powder. A week from now, when the snow finally thaws, a highly specialized, unacknowledged Department of Defense recovery unit is going to hike up to this relay station. They are going to find the spliced wires. They are going to find the dead laptop. They will pack it into a lead-lined Faraday cage and disappear it into a vault. Then they will hold a completely fabricated, highly produced press conference in Washington, D.C. A stern-faced military liaison will look into the television cameras and explain that you suffered a catastrophic psychotic break. They will say the extreme pressure of your highly classified research shattered your mind. They will say you wandered into the mountains in a state of clinical delirium and died of exposure. They will never find a body. They will blame the avalanches. They will blame the predatory wildlife. They will say the terrain is simply too rugged to recover your remains. The public will swallow the narrative whole. Your family will mourn you. Your name will become a tragic, forgotten footnote in the 24-hour news cycle. But you are not going to freeze to death. You are not crazy. You are not suicidal. You have never had a depressive episode in your entire life. You are in perfect physical health, and your mind has never been sharper, colder, or more terrifyingly clear. You are going to vanish from the face of the earth because you committed the single most unforgivable act of treason in human history. You didn't steal military launch codes. You didn't sell biological weapon schematics to a foreign intelligence agency in a dark alley. You didn't leak troop movements or satellite trajectories. You did something vastly, infinitely more dangerous. You figured out how the physics of the universe actually work. And when you realized that the invisible elite ruling class has been keeping the human race in a technological prison for the last 80 years, you didn't look away. You decided to build a conspiracy of one. You decided to pick the lock to the cage. To understand why the most powerful, lethal, and unacknowledged forces on this planet are currently hunting you through a blizzard, you have to rewind the clock. You have to go back exactly 11 months. You have to go back down into the earth. Because you are not just a civilian freezing in a shack. Your name is Dr. Eris Thorne. You are 36 years old. You hold a double doctorate in applied quantum magnetics and sub-vacuum topology from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. You possess a TS-SCI clearance, top secret, sensitive compartmented information, a clearance so astronomically high it requires a polygraph, a deep background financial audit of your entire extended family, and the permanent waiving of your Fourth Amendment rights. You are a senior theoretical researcher operating inside the Vanguard Deep Physics Array, a privately contracted black-budget facility buried deep inside the bedrock of the Nevada test site. You operate inside a SIF, a sensitive compartmented information facility. To even sit at your desk, you must pass through a gauntlet of security that makes the Pentagon look like a public library. You walk through a pneumatic man-trap that seals with a hydraulic hiss. The floor beneath you measures your exact biological weight down to the microgram to ensure you haven't swallowed an unauthorized flash drive. You press your face against a biometric scanner that bounces near-infrared light off the back of your eyeballs, mapping the unique microscopic blood vessels in your retinas while simultaneously checking for a living pulse. Your specific, highly compartmentalized domain is resonance energy transfer. You study the behavior of electromagnetic fields in localized vacuum states. You don't build the nuclear warheads. You don't design the hypersonic stealth drones or the satellite targeting lasers or the next generation of crowd control microwaves. You study the empty space between the atoms. You study the quantum foam, the roiling, infinite, invisible ocean of kinetic energy that exists in the vacuum of space when all physical matter and heat are completely removed. For nearly a century, human physicists have known this energy exists. The Casimir effect mathematically proved it in the 20th century. But terrestrial science, the science printed in the textbooks of every high school and university on the planet, dictates that it is a closed loop. You can measure the vacuum energy, but you can never, ever extract it. That is the fundamental law of thermodynamics. You cannot get something from nothing. You believe that law. You were a good, obedient researcher. You took your massive government paycheck. You stayed perfectly inside your assigned compartment, and you did not ask dangerous questions about the provenance of the exotic materials they brought to your lab in lead-lined lockboxes, until they made a bureaucratic mistake, until they made you the lead archivist for the legacy data migration project, until you looked at the files they keep buried in the absolute dark. In the United States, there is a terrifying, very real piece of federal legislation called the Invention Secrecy Act of 1951. It was drafted at the absolute height of the Cold War. The law grants the Department of Defense, the NSA, and the CIA the absolute, unchecked authority to review any patent application filed by an American citizen before it is ever seen by the Public Patent Office. If a shadow committee inside the intelligence apparatus decides that your invention poses a threat to national security, they issue a secrecy order. When a secrecy order is issued, your patent is instantly swallowed by a black hole. You, the civilian inventor, are legally prohibited from building a prototype of your own device. You cannot sell it, you cannot publish a peer-reviewed paper on it, you cannot even acknowledge that it exists. If you speak about it to anyone, including your own spouse, your own children, or your own defense attorney, you vanish into a federal maximum security prison for treason without a trial. The general public blindly assumes these suppressed patents are for things like radar-absorbing paint, or highly advanced chemical weapons, or untraceable cryptography, things that keep the country safe from geopolitical enemies. But you have the TS-SCI clearance to read the black hole files. You read all 6,145 active secrecy orders, and you discover the terrifying, apocalyptic truth about what the Vanguard Array is actually hiding. They aren't hiding weapons, they are hiding the fundamental physics of reality. You open a sealed, highly encrypted digital file from 1984. It is a patent submitted by a civilian mechanical engineer working in a dusty, unair-conditioned garage in New Mexico. A patent for a harmonic resonance cavitation drive. You look at the scanned, hand-drawn blueprints. The civilian designed a solid-state device utilizing microscopic, alternating layers of bismuth, magnesium, and synthetic quartz. He designed a metamaterial lattice that manipulated sub-quantum kinetic frequencies to create localized anti-gravitational lift. He figured out how to make a piece of heavy metal completely ignore the inertial mass of the Earth. The file notes that exactly 36 hours after the civilian filed this patent, an armed, unmarked federal strike team raided his laboratory. They confiscated his prototypes. They issued a secrecy order. They legally erased his name from the public registry. 4 months later, according to the casualty report attached to the file, that civilian inventor died in a sudden, single-car accident on a perfectly dry road in broad daylight. The steering column completely snapped. There were absolutely no skid marks. You keep digging. Your heart pounds against your ribs like a trapped bird. Your palms sweat as you scroll through the archives on your secure air-gapped terminal. You find a patent from 1999 filed by an electrical engineer in Seattle. She accidentally invented a zero-point induction coil. By hitting a specialized copper matrix with a highly specific terahertz frequency, her engine passively bled latent electrical power directly from the quantum vacuum at room temperature. She essentially built a motor that could power a full-size city block for 600 years, requiring absolutely zero fuel. Her laboratory mysteriously burned to the ground in an electrical fire. She was threatened with the Espionage Act. She currently lives in a secure psychiatric care facility, completely nonverbal. You find a third file from 2007. A marine engineer in Florida designed a closed-loop magnetic buoyancy engine for cargo ships. It was a localized gravity-canceling drive that would have rendered the global shipping industry completely independent of diesel fuel. He took his prototype out on a testing run in the Gulf of Mexico. The Coast Guard found his boat idling 3 days later. He was never seen again. You find dozens of these, hundreds of them. Suppressed patents for over-unity generators, technologies that pull limitless, clean, zero-point energy directly from the fabric of the universe. Technologies that make fossil fuels completely, permanently obsolete. Technologies that prove gravity is not a constant force, but a localized field that can be canceled with microwaves. You sit back in your mesh chair, staring at the glowing monitor, and your entire worldview violently, permanently collapses. You realize that the global conspiracy isn't just about hiding extraterrestrial biological entities or covering up reverse-engineered crashed crafts in the desert. The conspiracy is about maintaining absolute, crushing, permanent control over the human race. The shadow government operating the unacknowledged special access programs does not want free energy. They do not want humanity to evolve into a post-scarcity civilization. If this technology gets out, the global economy shatters overnight. The petrodollar ceases to exist. The trillion-dollar fossil fuel industry, the aerospace defense contractors, the international energy monopolies, they all drop to zero. The geopolitical leverage of resource scarcity completely evaporates. You cannot control a population that has access to infinite, free, decentralized power. You cannot force a populace into endless grinding wage slavery to pay for gas and electricity when a device the size of a shoebox can power a neighborhood forever. You cannot threaten to bomb foreign nations for oil when oil is completely obsolete. You cannot maintain an empire of debt when energy is as free as the air. The elite ruling class requires artificial scarcity to maintain dominance, and they will systematically, ruthlessly murder absolutely anyone who threatens to disrupt the paradigm. You sit in your windowless concrete office, 300 feet underground, and you make a decision. You decide that you are not going to be complicit, you are a scientist, you believe with absolute religious conviction that the truth belongs to humanity. You decide to actively conspire against the most dangerous organization on the planet. But you need to know if the civilian inventors were crazy or if they were right. You need to mathematically prove the physics. You secretly compile the data from 30 different suppressed blueprints. You bypass the compartmentalization protocols. You memorize the bismuth-magnesium lattice structures. You piece the puzzle together in your own mind. You run the complex algebraic equations on a yellow legal pad and immediately burn the paper in the laboratory incinerator, turning the ashes into dust. You realize the math isn't crazy. The math is utterly, terrifyingly flawless. You break your zero-point extraction schematics down into raw hexadecimal data. You know that if you put it in a classified physics folder, the automated defense algorithms running on the Vanguard servers will flag your clearance instantly. So you hide it in the one place the Department of Defense would never bother to look. You hide it in the facility maintenance logs on the internal server. The highly ignored, mind-numbingly boring digital ledger that tracks the facility's inventory of printer ink, copper wiring, and HVAC Freon coolant. You build a massive digital simulation of the suppressed zero-point energy drive inside the inventory logs, perfectly disguised as an automated spreadsheet calculation for air conditioning efficiency. At 2 a.m. on a Sunday, while the rest of the facility is completely empty, you run the simulation. You watch the numbers scroll across your black command prompt. You hold your breath. The simulation achieves over-unity. It works. You mathematically prove the physics are real. You prove that a solid-state machine, requiring absolutely no fuel, no combustion, and no moving parts, can passively generate 6 gigawatts of clean electricity forever, simply by bleeding the ambient vacuum energy of the universe. You sit back in your chair. The room is 62 degrees, but you are sweating completely through your clothes. You have just authored the blueprint to human liberation. But you make one fatal miscalculation. You assume the network is dumb. The exact millisecond your localized energy simulation hits over unity, the telemetry spikes on the intranet. The math is so violently anomalous, so completely paradigm-destroying, that deep inside the architecture of the National Security Agency in Fort Meade, Maryland, an automated quantum computing algorithm trips a silent, flashing red alarm. You did not know it, but rule number 1 of the program is absolute. You do not disrupt the energy paradigm. Over the next 4 weeks, your life completely stops belonging to you. The government doesn't kick your door down in the middle of the night. They don't drag you out of your bed and put a bullet in the back of your head. A dead scientist is a martyr. A dead scientist leaves a physical corpse, which demands a coroner's autopsy, which demands a police report, which demands a congressional investigation. The shadow government does not want an investigation. They want to make you look clinically, undeniably insane, so that when you finally try to whistleblow to the press, absolutely no one on earth will believe a single word you say. They initiate a systemic, creeping, suffocating psychological warfare campaign designed to slowly, methodically break your mind. It is a terrifying technique developed by intelligence agencies called Zersetzung, the systemic degradation of a target's reality. It starts with your digital footprint. You log into your workstation at the Vanguard array. You notice a 12 millisecond latency on your keystrokes. Your secure emails randomly delete themselves while you're typing them. Your login credentials fail out of nowhere, locking you out of your own lab for hours. Your supervisors start looking at you with quiet pity, noting your sudden incompetence and erratic behavior. Human Resources calls you in for a mandatory wellness check. They are actively building a documented paper trail of your mental instability. Then it bleeds into the physical world. You start seeing the vehicles. Unmarked, dark-colored Chevrolet Suburbans parked at the end of your quiet, tree-lined street in the suburbs of Las Vegas. They are always there when you leave for work. The engines are always idling. The windows are tinted so dark they look like solid obsidian glass. You drive down the highway, and a utility van with federal exempt license plates pulls out exactly 4 cars behind you. It follows you for 40 miles, perfectly matching your speed. They are establishing a baseline. They are letting you know that you are a piece of federal property. They are surrounding you with an invisible, suffocating cage of constant, heavy surveillance. Then comes the cellular interception. You notice your phone battery drains 20% faster when you're just walking from your car to your front door. You notice your phone constantly drops from 5G down to 3G for exactly 12 seconds before reconnecting. You know exactly what that means. You're a systems expert. That is a forced network downgrade via an SS7 protocol vulnerability. The Suburbans parked on your street are equipped with IMSI catchers, military-grade dirt box devices. They are masquerading as legitimate cell towers, forcing a handshake with your phone's SIM card. They are stripping away your end-to-end encryption. They are pinging your exact GPS coordinates every 10 seconds. They are reading every text, listening to every call, watching you through your own camera lens. You try to call your mother. The line clicks. A heavily distorted, synthetic voice repeats your exact words back to you on a 3-second delay over and over until you hang up the phone in tears. You are completely surgically exposed. Then, the physical gaslighting intensifies. You come home from work one evening, you punch the code into your alarm system. The deadbolts were locked, everything looks perfectly normal. But when you walk into your kitchen, your favorite coffee mug, which you always leave on the left side of the sink, is sitting directly in the dead center of your dining table. You walk into your bathroom, and your toothbrush has been moved from the ceramic cup to the center of your pillow on your bed. Nothing is stolen, nothing is broken. But the message is delivered with terrifying, agonizing clarity. We can touch you anytime we want. Your sanctuary is an illusion. You belong to us. You stop sleeping. You lose 15 pounds in 3 weeks. You install heavy-duty deadbolts, knowing they are entirely useless against the ghosts operating inside your house. You buy blackout curtains. You start checking behind the shower curtain with a heavy kitchen knife every single time you enter your bathroom. And then they deploy the ultimate weapon, the Havana Syndrome architecture. You are lying in bed at 2 a.m. on a Sunday. Your eyes are bloodshot. You are staring at the ceiling, too terrified to close your eyes. Suddenly, you hear a low, vibrating hum inside your own head. It doesn't come from the room. It bypasses your eardrums entirely. It sounds like 2 pieces of crushed glass rubbing together directly inside your auditory cortex. It is synthetic telepathy. The Frey effect. It is a directed microwave radiation weapon, firing a millimeter wave beam through the walls of your apartment from the utility van parked across the street. They are literally cooking the fluid in your inner ear. A sharp, metallic taste of raw copper floods your mouth. A horrific, debilitating wave of vertigo hits you so hard you fall out of bed, vomiting onto your own carpet. Your nose begins to bleed, thick red drops splattering onto the floorboards. They are inducing auditory hallucinations. They are literally vibrating your brain tissue, trying to push you to suicide. You go to your IT department at the Vanguard facility the next morning. You hand them your phone. You beg them to look at the Pegasus spyware. You tell them your apartment is being hit with terahertz frequencies. The IT monitor looks at you. He looks at your shaking hands. He looks at your hollow eyes, the dark bags under them, the dried blood you missed on your collar. He tells you that you're just stressed. He doesn't believe you. You realize they are setting the final stage. They have created the perfect narrative of the stressed, paranoid, schizophrenic scientist. You realize they are preparing to extract you. You remember the files. You remember what happened to the inventors who got too close to the physics. They didn't just die. They were vanished, erased from reality using the very anti-gravity tech they were studying. You refuse to be erased in the dark. You refuse to let the shadow government win. If they are going to take you off the board, you're going to burn their entire empire to the ground on your way out. You are going to finish your conspiracy. You systematically strip your life down. You steal a ruggedized Panasonic laptop. You download the entire archive onto a solid-state drive. You buy a used SUV with cash from a scrapyard so it cannot be tracked by GPS. And you drive straight up into the Ruby Mountains, directly into the worst blizzard of the decade, seeking the highest altitude and the most isolated microwave communication relay you can find, which brings you back to this exact terrifying moment. Back to the frozen, rusted floor of the relay station, back to 3:14 in the morning. You look at the glowing screen of the laptop. It's at the encrypted transfer, 92% complete. You compiled absolutely everything onto this hard drive. The 1984 patent, the 1999 acoustic water engine, the 2007 magnetic buoyancy drive, the over Unity mathematics, the simulation log showing the 6 gigawatts of free energy. You package it all into a massive, heavily encrypted zip file, and you are currently blasting it through this massive microwave dish to WikiLeaks, to the New York Times, to thousands of independent journalists on the dark web. Once the progress bar hits 100%, humanity gets the fire back. The petrodollar dies. The control matrix shatters forever. Encrypted transfer, 94% complete. Battery, 4% remaining. You look up from the screen. Through the frosted, cracked glass of the Relay Shack's window, your blood instantly turns to ice water. A quarter-mile down the jagged, snow-covered mountain ridge, you see them. There are no headlights. There are no flashing red and blue police sirens. There are no helicopters because it is physically impossible to fly a helicopter in a Category 4 blizzard. It is just 3 massive, blacked-out, heavily armored vehicles. They look like Suburbans, but they are lacking wheels. They are driving in perfect, synchronized, militaristic formation directly up the sheer cliff face. They are completely invisible against the dark, identifiable only by the faint starlight reflecting off their obsidian windshields. They found you. The dirt box pinged your massive data transfer. The kill team is here. Your breath comes in shallow, ragged, hyperventilating gasps. You slam your open hand against the laptop keyboard, as if physical force can make the data move faster. Encrypted transfer. 96% complete. The unacknowledged vehicles are closing the distance with terrifying, impossible speed. They aren't driving like normal transports. The massive engines make absolutely no sound over the howling wind. They are literally gliding over the deep snowbanks, utilizing localized gravitational dampening fields. You reach into your jacket pocket. Your hand closes around the heavy steel grip of a loaded 9mm Glock 19. You chamber a round with a loud clack. Your hands are shaking so violently in the freezing cold you can barely keep the barrel straight. Encrypted transfer. 98% complete. The 3 vehicles pull up directly outside the relay shack. They hover inches above the snow, boxing the small metal building in, effectively trapping you on the edge of the cliff. They do not turn on their lights. The engines do not idle. You aim the gun at the thin metal door. You scream into the empty room. You brace yourself for the door to be kicked off its hinges. You brace yourself for the men in the dark tactical gear to drag you out by your hair, to put a black bag over your head, and to throw you over the edge into the black canyon. But they don't. The heavy doors of the shadow vehicles do not open. No one steps out into the freezing wind. Instead, the atmosphere inside the relay shack begins to violently, fundamentally shift. It happens like a massive vacuum seal breaking inside your own skull. The ambient noise of the blizzard, the screaming wind, the rattling metal, the crunching ice, terminates instantaneously. It doesn't fade out. It is deleted from existence. You are hit with the phenomenon known in UAP encounters as the Oz factor. Absolute, crushing, dead silence. The air pressure inside the room drops so violently your eardrums pop with a sickening, painful crack. And then you feel it, a low, bone-rattling, electromagnetic hum vibrating inside your teeth. It is the exact same terahertz frequency you mapped in the 0-point simulation. The shadow government's assassins didn't bring guns. They don't need guns. They brought the technology. They are generating a localized vacuum envelope directly over the relay station. The hairs on your arms stand straight up. The smell of the freezing wind is instantly scrubbed from the air, replaced entirely by the sharp, metallic, toxic tang of ozone. It smells like a massive electrical fire inside a submarine. You try to open your mouth to scream, to gasp for air, but your vocal cords cannot push the oxygen. The atmosphere inside the shack has turned into a perfect vacuum. The physical space around you is adapting to a gravitational load that shouldn't exist on this planet. The temperature in the room plummets even further. It drops from 12 below zero to absolute zero in 3 seconds. A thick layer of crystalline frost instantly spiderwebs across the inside of the laptop screen, obscuring the data. You look down at your hands holding the gun. The edges of your physical form are blurring. The gun feels light, almost weightless. The atomic structure of your body is vibrating at a frequency that terrestrial physics cannot accommodate. You're being subjected to a topological phase shift. The government isn't going to shoot you and leave your body in the snow. They are using the reverse-engineered propulsion system to silently, perfectly scrub you from reality itself. They are pushing you out of phase with the third dimension. They are decoupling your atoms. They are evaporating you directly into the 0-point field. You look over at the laptop screen. The liquid crystal display is beginning to warp and fracture under the intense gravitational shear stress, the pixels bleeding into strange, impossible colors. But through the cracked screen, through the heavy layer of frost, you see the final, glorious green bar. Encrypted transfer. 100% complete. All packets delivered. connection terminated. A massive, hysterical, overwhelming wave of pure triumph washes over your terrified brain. You did it. They were 30 seconds too late. You beat them. You just released the blueprint for free energy to the entire human race. Your conspiracy against the government succeeded. You drop the gun. You smile. Your vision begins to white out into pure, blinding luminescence. The physical laws of the universe fold over you like a crushing, heavy blanket of absolute cold. The relay shack is suddenly completely empty. The laptop battery finally dies, the screen cutting to black. The spliced Ethernet cable sparks once in the dark, but you are not there. There is no sound of a struggle. There is no blood on the grated floor. There are no footprints leading away from the shack. You are simply erased. The black, hovering vehicles sit in the dark for exactly 3 minutes. Then, silently, they reverse. They turn around in perfect unison, and they glide back down the pitch-black mountain, leaving absolutely zero physical trace that they were ever there. By tomorrow, the Department of Defense will take control of the mountain. They will hold a press conference and tell the world you went crazy and died in the storm. But the data is already out there. It is sitting on hard drives in basements, in newsrooms, and in civilian laboratories all over the world. The physics cannot be contained anymore. The shadow government thought they could silence the math. They thought they could silence you. But they didn't kill you. They just pushed you into the space between spaces. You are trapped in the void. You are consciousness suspended in the infinite, freezing vacuum of the zero-point field. You exist in the dark, floating between the atoms of the physical world. You are unmoored from time, watching the world spin without you. You are the ghost in the machine now. And as the viewer sits in their room right now, staring at this video, holding their phone in their hands, breathing the air in their safe, predictable home, if their screen suddenly flickers, if they notice their battery drain 20% in a matter of seconds, if they suddenly hear a tiny, high-pitched ringing in their inner ear when their room is perfectly quiet, or smell the sudden, sharp scent of ozone, they shouldn't panic. It isn't the government watching them. It's you, reaching through the static from the other side, reminding them that the math is real, reminding them that the cage is finally broken, and warning them that the black vehicles are always, always waiting in the dark.